Good morning. Everybody made it to day 2. So welcome. My name is Kristen Howell from SAP, and we are so proud to continue our sponsorship of the Lundgren Center and the Global Retailing Conference. And as we heard yesterday from many of the speakers, technology really has become a driver of how many of our retailers are reimagining their businesses. And at SAP, we work every day to make sure we're bringing the best innovation, the best software, the best technology to any retail business problem out there, from finance to merchandising to supply chain to loyalty management. But today, I have the privilege of introducing our first speaker. Rachel Shechtman is a fourth-generation entrepreneur, and her journey to create Story in 2011 was informed by a 10-year career as a retail brand and marketing consultant. She founded Cube Ventures as an independent firm that introduced brands like Tom's, Bliss Spas, Kraft Foods, JCPenney, and the CFDA to the power of non-traditional merchandise-driven storytelling. Story's approach to retail has become a new North Star for the industry. And her business has been widely praised by the press, including features in the New York Times, Ad Age, and Women's Wear Daily. Rachel has been named one of Fast Company's most creative people in business, Fortune's 40 Under 40 list, and Crane's 40 Under 40 list. She's also named as one of Ad Age's most creative people. Most recently, Rachel was inducted into the American Advertising Foundation's 2017 Hall of Achievement. She serves as a trusted advisor to a number of startups, including Smarty Pants, Birchbox, and Micmac. She's a member of the board of directors of the National Retail Federation and the CEO and founder of Story. Please join me in welcoming Rachel to the stage.
Thank you. Good morning. Oh, everyone's awake. You sound more awake than I do. All right. So I can kind of see everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you, Terry and Kimberly and everyone for just being so gracious. So what I thought I would do is I'm going to walk through some case studies and stories, but I really want this to be a conversation, so I'm going to try and leave as much time as possible for questions. I'll answer everything. I don't know that I'll have a good answer, but I'll answer it. But before I'll ask a lot of questions because it will determine what I talk about. So for starters, raise your hand if you haven't heard of Story and you don't know what we do. Okay, thank you. That's a good first start. So there we go. So my story began here. This is the Jacob Javits Center in New York City. I was 12 years old, and you're probably wondering why I was a 12-year-old walking a trade show. I was with my mom, who was in the gourmet food industry and had a store, and I was with her because I was there, of course, to buy my bat mitzvah favors wholesale. And so I was tagging along with her, and I was walking, and then I asked her the question that I guess would ultimately be my future, which was, you can shop for a living? Like, this is a job? You could, like, get paid to buy things? So that's where it really all began. And then fast forward just a few years later, and after college, I moved to New York, I consulted, and voila, I had lots of random theories and questions about why things were done one way and why couldn't they be done another way. And so I thought, you know, let's just like sign a lease without a business plan and see what happens. So that's Story on the corner of 10th Avenue and 19th Street. And here's the idea. It's a 2,000 square foot space that has the point of view of a magazine. We reinvent it entirely every 3 to 8 weeks like a gallery, and we sell things like a store. And when I mean entirely, I mean every SKU, fixture, you name it. So we've done wellness story, made in America story, style and technology story, home for the holidays story. So you can see whatever story we're telling is what's in our brackets and our parentheses, and we've done now 40 different stories. Or I guess I'm now going to say I've owned 40 stores, because that sounds, you know, maybe more impressive. So at the heart of the model is this idea of retail media. And the reason why I kind of frame it that way is we're used to seeing, you know, a magazine cover in the media space that talks about a theme like color, and then this is our version of the cover of our magazine for color. A magazine tells stories by writing articles and taking pictures. We tell stories through merchandising and events. Magazines have advertisers and we have sponsors. So now we have 2 revenue streams and sponsors underwrite about 80% of our stories. So when you open up that color issue of InStyle, you'll have a letter from the editor with some editorial perspective adjacent to a paid ad. And then in story, we team up with brands who add authority and authenticity to a subject matter. Benjamin Moore knows far more about color than I will ever know about color, so it makes sense for them to be our partner for Color Story. If Taco Bell wanted to sponsor Color Story, that might be a different thing, but we really want it to feel cohesive and add value both for the consumer but also for our business model. And then when you went throughout the store, it was kind of organized and merchandised by color. So I think one of the many conclusions, hypotheses, things we're curious about, and that everyone's talking about now, right, is the evolution from a place that sells things to an experience that sells things. And I think my aha moment with the word experience, because I couldn't tell you that like in 2011, I'm like, yeah, we're going to be this like experiential concept shop. I had no idea what I was doing. So we teamed up with a small company called GE. And General Electric wanted to do a story around making things and really bring to life different processes and machinery that they used to make jet engines or different machines, just so consumers were aware of kind of what they did, because they're kind of this behemoth. And so 80% of the experience in the store was experiential. You couldn't buy anything. 20% you could buy. And I thought to myself, and we were getting paid a hefty sponsorship fee. So as an industry, I don't know how many years, there's many academics in the room who could correct me, maybe 100+ years, it's been what? Sales per square foot is the metric. And so with technology changing and consumer changing, why are we using such an outdated metric? And so making things story kind of gave us this aha moment, which was, why don't we just call it experience per square foot? And if we're making money for it, which, by the way, 5 out of 10 times, we're making more money through charging for experiential space in the store, and by charging, I don't mean consumers, I mean brands, than I would be, selling a bracelet or a sweater. So there were CNC mills. You could laser cut and make your own sunglasses in the store. There were 9 MakerBot 3D printers. We had a maker station where every week we just had a different local maker come, because everyone needs a wooden rocket, of course. This was one of those moments where you're like so thrilled you have a camera on you, because that was natural, that's not enhanced for happiness. But I was like, it was just a special moment. So this is a young girl seeing a 3D printer for her first time. And I think, one of the things that this picture also makes me think of is, a lot of times people are like, well, who's your demographic? And I say, it's very narrow. It's men, women, and kids between 5 and 95. I was recently reminded that Iris Apfel turned 96, and she's a good friend of Story, so I need to change that now to 5 to 96. But the reason why I say that is because as people are more precious with their time and they're choosing how to spend it, if my target for his story with our hot towel shave station is a 35-year-old male, he's not walking into Story thinking he's getting a hot towel shave. So if I want 20 minutes of his time and he's spending the day with his 6-year-old daughter, I better have something in that store for his 6-year-old daughter so that I get his attention. So we kind of think of our target marketing in 2 subsets. A couple other experiential examples. We teamed up with Cigna a few years ago. I kind of like these unlikely bedfellows, I call them, because I was like, Cigna, what am I going to do with Cigna? And what they were really interested in is, brands like Blue Cross Blue Shield and other service companies more and more are taking up retail space for customer acquisition and retention. So Cigna wanted to use us as an R&D channel to test out different strategies. And one of the technologies that they had internally that I was like, hey, can we put this in the store and just see what happens? It's a virtual reality meditation station. So for 2 minutes in the dead of winter, you could be on a beach in Bali, you could be in the jungle of Belize. So there were actually people who came every single day on their lunch break for their like 2-minute meditation, which was kind of fun. Who knows Perch Interactive? Oh, okay. PERCH Interactive, look them up, they're amazing. They have lots of demos. They're not paying me to say this. I'm just saying it because they're awesome. We met them in 2012 when we did a program for Mayor Bloomberg when he was in office to find innovative fashion, retail, and technology companies. And the way Perch works is for every physical action, there's a digital reaction. So on the front end, it's consumer engagement, and on the back end, it collects customer data and analytics. So you could also real-life A/B test if you wanted to. And so we kind of fell in love with them when we met them and kind of begged them to just use them as many stories as possible. So this is one format. I'll show you another one later that we use them. So this is our most recent story. Dare I say my favorite, but it's workspace story. And it's experiential in a very different way. I actually didn't know if this would work, but I was just really excited by the subject, so I said, let's just try it. And I'm calling it a transactional co-working space. So people can actually book space in the store and work out of it. And so I teamed up with this great guy, Aaron Dignan, who has a company called The Ready. And he's all about the future of work and transforming organizations and management teams. And so we were brainstorming, and there's a lot of conversation about how open workspaces, at the end of the day, are maybe not so productive and not in the best interest of our personal happiness. This is not me saying this, I'm just quoting things. And so we kind of stumbled upon this architect in Chicago who came up with this floor plan that's 5 different rooms, and each room has a different intention. So one of the rooms that you see there is like the salon. And so we reached out to our friends at Starbucks, and the Starbucks Reserve brand, which is their higher-end brand. I'm like, you think you could get us a coffee that no other Starbucks has? So they said yes, and that was kind of fun. So we have cold brew, cold foam, coffee in the store. This is the office space. You can't really see, but that screen that just looks like a screen is a digital interactive whiteboard from Samsung. And then there's this other interactive wall. But it's, you know, one of those, this is another example, by the way, of perch. So if I picked up Ariana's book, it would then play her interview with Ellen DeGeneres. So that's kind of the shelf version of it. So like these offices are literally, I don't know, 3 by 3. They're like a box. And within 2 hours of us sending out our email blast, which isn't that big of a list, it's like 48,000 people, we were completely booked. An average day has between 6 to 13 people on a wait list. So that was a huge surprise to me. I haven't figured out why yet, but that was just interesting. So yeah, so the future store is not a store, probably not the room to say this in, but I also have a store, so I feel like I can say that. And then the small words say, okay, not really, but it's a new kind of store. So who's heard of ComplexCon? Okay. So ComplexCon is something I hadn't heard of till a year ago, and I am so obsessed with it, it's not even funny. I stayed there for 2 full days nonstop. So what is ComplexCon? First of all, Complex is a magazine. If I'm not mistaken, it was started by Mark Echo. So this looks like a trade show, right? The difference is it's for consumers. This was in Long Beach, California. And so you can shop. So consumers can buy tickets and shop, and they can get Nikes, leather jackets, limited editions, or you could hear Pharrell perform, or you could listen to a panel conversation on the future of beauty and startups with Chelsea Handler and BeautyCon. And so I was so obsessed with this because here are some fun facts. You have to pay to go. So before you walk in that door, they've made money. So you're paying to shop before you've bought anything, which I just find phenomenal. I can't remember the number. I know the difference of $20 million is a lot, but let's just say it's between $20 and $40 million that they did in total in 2 days. And it was only the 2nd year they've done this event. But it was just fascinating to me. So what I thought was interesting was when you looked at the different age and the demographic and all the activities going on, there was something for everyone, but also like people's attention spans are so much shorter, right? So you want to go to a conference and then you want to go to the Nike booth and you want to go do this. So I literally just sat there like a stalker, but not a stalker, watching everything all day because I really think this is something in terms of how I think commerce is continuing to evolve. And I think, what about Museum of Ice Cream? Who knows them? Okay. So I think as a spin-off, you know, these next few examples are different than ComplexCon in that ComplexCon is an event. It happens once a year. It's 2 days. It's multifaceted. It's associated with a media company, blah, blah, blah. But what I think it all rolls up to with a lot of the other things we're reading around experience and around community is what some of these other examples are. So for those who are new to Museum of Ice Cream, it basically is an Instagram playground. It started with 2 friends in New York who just did it for fun and then went viral and crazy, and they did it in LA and San Francisco and Miami, and I think they're going to open up a permanent space. But so you have people doing experience, right? But then you have other people doing product. And so I think more and more we're going to see shoppable Instagram playgrounds, right? Because they might sell some t-shirts and stuff, but I think you'll start to see these experiences become brands, and brands become experiences. Color Factory is another one in San Francisco. It's worth Googling because the images are amazing, also good for visual merchandising teams. This just opened. I have not been. I just thought it was kind of like funny / weird. It's called the Egg House. So like talk about like really linear focused thinking. And then this is Candytopia, which is in LA as well. So at the heart of all of what I do day to day that I love the most is product. It's where I came from, and I think I learned merchandising from my mom in the most non-traditional ways, for better or worse. And so we ended up doing some fun projects that really didn't just look at product as a transaction and going to the sales column of the P&L, but how can you get a higher ROI for the effort that goes into something? So is it using product for customer acquisition? Is it for marketing purposes? What are other strategic ways you can get ROI beyond the dollars on the balance sheet? So Pepsi was another brand that I was like, what are we going to do with Pepsi? I'm not serving soda in the store. I'm not giving soda away in the store. We're going to get a lot of slack for this. But I was like, all right, let's try it. So they had this new campaign. It was all about emojis. And so we kind of brought the narrative of their campaign to life as a combination of both emojis use in visual merchandising, but also using product adjacent to what their campaign elements were and having actual product support that narrative. But what we did is we reached out to a company. It's called YR Studio. They do this with Topshop and a lot of other brands. But basically, you can make custom apparel in store and walk out with your own customized t-shirt within 15 minutes. So now you have thousands of customers taking Pepsi's IP, developing a personal relationship with it, expressing themselves, and then walking around the street wearing emojis, right? And so, that was just something that was kind of fun to explore and see how people used it. This is a kind of Snapchat photo experience where you could drop in emojis after. Is Karen here yet? Karen Katz? This was a fun partnership we did where we got to work with Neiman Marcus, and it was the first time we did something with another retailer. We worked with Viacom on bringing to life all their 90s characters. And so it was Remember When story. So you'll notice on the right column, we always have a letter from the editor in the store, and it's graphically contextually relevant to the story that we're telling. So that was like a valedictorian speech, and that was homeroom, and Do Good Goods was everything that had social impact. And then we created 100 exclusive items in 3 months using their creative and then making up our own pattern. So it was everything from, do people know Double Dare? Yeah, there's like my favorite. Custom Keds, Stance socks, Smashbox lipstick. We even had the wheel in the store, which is fun. Not fun for liability, but fun. Slime. Slime gets more of a reaction than Double Dare? Okay, good to know. I'll rearrange the slides next time. So we worked with Sugarfina, Terrapin Stationery. So we also did a slime Rolex. So that was kind of fun. State backpacks. And then adjacent to it, kind of like the reference I made earlier with the letter from the editor is, making sure that you have product, you have store design, you have people. Some people are auditory learners, some are visual, some are visceral. So how can we capture as much as possible without being smothering? And so using graphic design and editorial content that we create is important. But the other reason why I'm calling it out is because for this partnership, we engaged with a local retailer in LA, Ron Robinson, and he took our creative, and then we gave him all of our assets, and then he brought it to life in his store. Which was really fun to see that happen, and also give our products a life other than the East Coast. And for those who are wondering, we don't sell online, so it was novel in that way as well. But since we don't sell online, it was exciting to team up with Neiman's. And so we did kind of an online pop-up shop that had a range of their product. And this is probably less relevant to the talk, but connected to kind of merchandising and what I'm really passionate about. The woman who makes these soaps, the loose soaps, I met on a Saturday morning in Portland, Oregon. I was just like out there for a conference, walking around, exploring, and I saw her soaps, and I was like, these are insane, I need to sell them. And she's like, well, I'm not making them for Christmas because I have too many orders. And I was like, well, I might not leave your booth unless you agree to make them because I'm kind of obsessed with them. And so anyways, after like 30 minutes of negotiating for like $8 soap for Christmas, we got it in the store, people loved it fine. Nickelodeon came along and I was like, oh my God, wouldn't it be fun if the girl in Portland did custom soaps? But what ended up happening was that happy accident turned into a program that we've done with Neiman's, and we did it this past holiday with Bloomingdale's, is now you have this small independent maker in Portland, Oregon selling to Neiman Marcus, all because of this opportunity. And then we went to Neiman's and we said, hey, she's not like EDI compliant, like no chargebacks, like here's the one pager, you gotta pre-agree to these terms if you want her cool product. And we did the same thing with Bloomingdale's, right? Like we have like badass, awesome, talented, independent brands, and they're small, and they'll move quickly and get you great stuff, but we just need to make it simple. And Bloomingdale's nailed it, and Neiman's nailed it, so that was a lot of fun. The other part, okay, my last question, then I'll stop asking annoying questions. Raise your hands if, when I say the drop or what a drop is of merchandise, you know what that means. Okay, so this is something that I suspect, I feel like every year the industry has like a word, like 3 years ago it was curated, now we're doing experience and community. So drops are, you know, I think recently it's become popularized because of a brand called Supreme, and they release products once a week on a Thursday. The lines around their store are like nothing you have ever seen. They do a tremendous amount of collaborations. They just did one with Rimowa Luggage. So I literally, on the plane here, Googled, because I wanted the most recent information. So in 22 hours, this one article on this one blog got over 24,000 shares, just on the article about what product they were dropping. So they did a partnership and a huge collection with Lacoste. And these are some of what the products are. So this anorak, 10 seconds, it sold out. And they're not just selling 5 units, by the way. And so it's kind of remarkable. So I think like this taps into multiple things, right? Yes, it's surprise and delight, and it's discovery, but it's also scarcity. And it's also like killer product. So I think this idea of drops is kind of intriguing, and it requires participation too. And I think there's very many things we can do passively on our devices. And the idea that like you're engaged, I think adds an emotional connection to it. So this last example is a little esoteric, but it's one that I stumbled upon a couple weeks ago that I was really fascinated by because it kind of ties in a few of the last things I've spoken about. So there's an artist that a friend of mine told me about. I'm going to pronounce her name wrong, I'm sure. C.J. Handry. And so he's like, look at this piece, it's amazing. I really, you know, I bought one, I'm going to get one, da-da-da. I said, oh, awesome, cool. Like, I want to get one. And I was like, the paintings are beautiful. And he's like, they're not paintings. And I was like, what? So she does that with a pencil, by the way. Like, that's not a painting. That's all colored pencil. I know this isn't an art talk, but I thought that was pretty cool, so I had to show it. So I wanted it that much more. And then he's like, you can't because it sold out in 2 minutes. So I'm like, wait, this Instagram artist without a gallery did a drop of artwork that sold out in 2 minutes. If you can't read the price, they're $11,700. So yeah, so those sold out in 2 minutes. So that was fascinating, but here's the fascinating part. So my friend Ben then says to me, hey, let's go to our art show. And I'm like, how are we going to our art show? Like, you told me you just bought her product. And he's like, well, she's doing an art show. And I was like, well, what's she gonna show in our art show if she just sold out her show? So what she did is she set up an art exhibition after she sold out her work. She then photographed the entire exhibition before anyone could go. She got all of this press. These are just kind of some of the Google results that came up. Monochrome madness. Art is an accidental afterthought. It's, oh, I did pronounce it right. C.J. Hendry's Rainbow Funhouse. over 4 hours to get in the door, right? Now keep in mind, all of it is sold out and they're $11,700. These are what the rooms look like, so you can go in and take pictures of yourself. But when you went there, I didn't have a picture of it. When you went there on the wall, she was selling something. You know what she was selling? She was selling photos of the rooms that had the art that was sold out, right? So I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I thought paying to get into ComplexCon was like a good deal. This is like unbelievable. But it gets better because she did 100 editions of each one of these photographs and sold out. And so I'm not saying you sell out a collection before you put it on the runway. Like, I'm not saying that these are apples to apples comparisons, but there's a heck of a lot of creativity and detail and risk and adventure and thought that goes into this. But like, I think too, if you really boil it down, a lot of what these things have in common are like the origins of what we do as like shopkeepers and designers and managers and CEOs, and that's like find good product, offer good service. And so I think it's just finding what's the 3.0 version of differentiated product and what's the 3.0 version of differentiated service and experience. And those are my stories for now, and I'll answer any questions. Thank you. How many employees do I have? Not many. In the store, peak season in the store, there's like 24. This time of year, there's like 14 or 16. Our headquarters, you'd be shocked, we have about 6 people on the team. Yeah, our buying team's 2 people.
Hi, over here.
Hi, over there.
Hi, Gabriel Nakovich, senior in the retail program. So my question's going to be based off creativity. So I see that throughout your stores, the same aesthetic pretty much stays the same to keep the brand image strong, but the design functionally really changes depending on what you're selling. How do you execute creativity to like make these stores come to life?
Good question. And thank you, I take that as a big compliment. I don't know necessarily that I have the answer. I think when we created it was really important to me to have a powerful identity, and that identity not just be something that was a logo that someone designed. So for those in the room who are interested in design, I'd highly suggest looking into the work of Stefan Sagmeister and Jessica Walsh. And I heard a TED Talk by Stefan years ago called Things I've Learned in My Life So Far. And to make a very long story short, I politely stalked him and figure out a way to get him to do my logo for less than $1 zillion. And when we sat down in the first meeting, he said to me, what are 2 words that you would say to describe your brand? And as you could probably tell, I'm a verbose person, so 2 words is hard for me. But I said the first 2 things that came to mind, and it was versatile and engaging. To which he responded, you really think you could pull that off? And I was like, well, I'd at least like to try. And so, you know, I feel like his identity is definitely versatile and engaging. And while that may not be directly attributed to creativity, anytime we're designing a space, we're always asking, is it versatile and is it engaging? And I think another thing that we also do is we rotate. So we use a lot of freelance talent. So obviously 6 people don't pull off all of that. So we use different architects and designers because one person's graphic design aesthetic may be great for Disrupt Story with Mr. Robot, but that's definitely a different vibe than Rugrats. So I hope that answers it. Hi.
Is this working? Hi, Sarah Lauer, Senior Director for Customer Success with Reflexes Solutions. I just love hearing about this, and actually my question is really around how do you ideate the good from the bad? So I'm sure with all of these different stories that you have, there's some that you have to kind of put on the cutting room floor as you're figuring out what your next story is going to be. So how do you do that systemically? I'm just curious.
In terms of choosing what the stories are?
Yes. I mean, or is there ever one that you were like, gosh, why did we give that one up? I'd just love to hear a little bit more about the process of how you
Sure.
come up with those great stories.
Sure. So, so we ask ourselves a few different questions before we get to a certain theme. So one bucket is that because 80% of our stories are sponsored, that informs what the theme is, especially because we want them to be contextually relevant. So for sponsored ones, you know, Cigna would be connected to, you know, something having to do with health and wellness story. And then we basically think through the angle we're telling, and maybe it would be wellness story or well-being story or feel-good story. So we just kind of, what's the angle within a subject matter to focus on? We ask ourselves, is it relevant to men, women, and kids between 5 and 95? And by relevant, we mean like exciting, interesting, engaging. So for example, a bridal story was like it was a non-starter, right? Just because I had a very hard time understanding how like, I could be wrong, but like how like 6-year-old boys and girls would want to like kick it in a store for an hour that's like all about brides. And so obviously some stories are slanted more one way than another, but there's always something for kids and something for everyone, so that's really important to us. We learned the hard way, and we always like ask ourselves, like, are these partners like that we're gonna have fun to work with and that they're willing to take risks and they're gonna like jump on board with our like unique cocktail because it is different. So we've never done, we wouldn't do a story. We're not a pop-up shop and we're not an agency. So I won't do anything for money. So we've never done a story we haven't wanted to do, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes any sense. There's one over there and here.
Well, hi, this is the executions that you shared. They're individual, and obviously it looks like they're working fantastically in your one location. For the chain retailers, that many of whom are present here, how would you recommend they apply some of these principles to executing storytelling that's compelling in their environments without being diluted by sort of mass producing them in many locations?
Yeah, no, I think there's a couple answers to that. So I think, you know, 2 months after we started, I got like a random email from Nordstrom, and like a bunch of executives at Nordstrom wanted to meet with me, which I found funny because I had no idea what I was doing 2 months into this. I still don't really know. I know a little bit more. And they wanted to learn about the model, and a lot of what we talked about together informed what they do with pop-ins now. And for those who aren't familiar with it, pop-ins are a rotating concept within Nordstrom, run by a kick-ass merchant called Olivia Kim, and she's wonderful. So, you know, that's one micro example. There's other examples of other stores doing thematic rotating concepts, and so I think I don't know that there's one answer, but I think when you think about scale and whether it's department stores or single brand stores, I think, yeah, maybe there's thematic rotating things about what we do that could be interesting at scale for sure. But it's also like think about the example of that art, you know, about what CJ Hendry did or ComplexCon. Like, I think there's so much uncharted territory and waters that it's like, hey, let's just like test and try and expand different formulas so that, yeah, scale the rotating concept, but how can we like get different, you know, in New York, you could go to, within a 20-block radius, get the, you know, no offense to theory, but the same theory pant, you know, in 40 stores. So it's kind of like, I think what I'm excited about is not just how you change the experience, but, you know, merchandising and other touch points of that impact the customer as well, if that makes any sense.
How do you know when you're, pardon me, how do you know when you've hit that point where it's a covetable moment? Like, you're creating these experiences that are fun and engaging. When do you know that that one is enough without going overboard?
In terms of customers liking it, or?
In terms of creating those experiences, as you're going through the creative process and you go, this is it, I don't want to make any more changes, this is what's going to be engaging, what does that tell for you?
Well, this isn't a sexy answer. It's really dictated by time, to be honest with you. Is like, some of these we've done from start to finish in 4 weeks, and while we can pull it off, and now, you know, to be honest, sometimes the shorter ones are much easier for us to do than ones that we have 5 months. I know people in big stores here are like, 5 months is still fast. But so to be honest with you, there's a lot that does or doesn't happen for no other reason than I'm a small business, I didn't raise money, I have a small team, we do things quickly and last minute. So it's not a sexy answer, but that's the true answer. Anyone else? Going once?
Hi.
Hi.
Back here. So what do you suggest for students who are going into the work world in a few years or even this upcoming year who want to go into something more creative rather than your typical retail job? So what if we wanted to intern for you or for other companies? What would you suggest?
I would kill to have someone run an internship program for me because then I could have interns. So I would love to take you and many others as interns. Now we just need to find someone to run an internship program for me. But in terms of looking for where you would look for unlikely places, I don't actually know that I have the answer. But what I would maybe say is, I think, just the fact that you're at an event like this, right? And then there's even smaller format events, whether it's at, places like General Assembly or through different organizations, even in different markets, that if you Google Future of Retail Conference, you're gonna discover companies, right? That there might be a pitch conversation and I'm thinking and talking out loud, so this might be a bad answer, but we'll see. So, but as you look at these Future of Retail or next generation startup type events, you're gonna discover lots of different companies, and then you're gonna be like, oh, that's super cool. Let me reach out to Away Luggage because I like what they're doing with their retail stores. So I think that would maybe be a good starting place.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? That it? All right. Well done. Thank you.